what are we at now? Okay, just while I've been talking, we're almost at 20 now. Just during the conversation, right? We're at 19 Celsius now. And so we've really warmed up. Hey, it's Greg here with Outdoors on the Cheap, and I'm out here today. Decided to do a video on warming up this kind of shelter I've got here, this sort of situation. This is a shelter I built, I don't know, maybe a week ago. I came out here one day around 4 o'clock and just simulated the situation where you're lost and you've got only a few hours of daylight, and you know, what kind of shelter can you throw together in that amount of time with the materials you have. That day there was an ice storm, freezing rain, all that sort of stuff. So spruce boughs were sort of out because they were all soaked and covered in snow and ice and stuff. So I was just knocking, there's an area here with a lot of dead trees. So I was just knocking down dead trees and building a kind of lean-to type shelter like this. In survival manuals, the argument for this type of shelter is that once you get your fire going, it'll throw heat at the wood. The wood will heat up and it'll create a kind of microclimate in that area where you are. Right, the fire is in the main fire. You're building a big fire. This is kind of like a combination long log fire and what's that called? Russian Siberian log fire. That's what it's called. So you got long log fire. You got the logs going this way, but just enough because I haven't got an axe and saw and stuff like that to build stuff up. I'm simulating a situation where you're out there hunting, right, and you just have a knife and you just have a pack of matches and basic gear and you're sort of stuck. Okay, now, I mean, you should always have something like this with you in the woods, right? And if you want to win one of these, all you got to do is subscribe to the channel. If you're one of my first 1,000 subscribers, you can win one of these. If you don't want to wait and you want to buy one from the Newfoundland Knife Company. I'll put the details up on the screen. But anyway, what I'm doing here today, I brought some thermometers out with me, and I'm going to measure the temperature at different distances from the fire. I'm going to measure the temperature. I'm going to get a really good fire going here with this sort of Siberian log fire / long log fire. I got logs laid this way and logs laid that way. But these are just trees I was able to push over. Basically dead standing trees that I thought were reasonably dry, that I was able to push over. Okay. Now, I mean, today it's Saturday, February 18th or 19th. And we had like a hurricane yesterday. It was like incredibly windy and rainy and snowy and everything, right? So you see there's not a lot of snow on the ground. We had snow, we had like, I don't know, 1.5 feet of snow or something like that a few days ago. And then yesterday it warmed up to, I don't know, 8 or 9 degrees Celsius, and it rained all day with incredible wind. And all the snow disappeared. And then overnight it snowed a little bit and we got this nice little dusting, right? And that's, I live in Nova Scotia, Canada, but this is a coastal part of the country, which is just a coastal part of the province, which has just bizarre weather compared to the more inland parts of the province. Anyway, so the shelter withstood all of that. Actually, you know, for those of you that watched that video, I had the beam going across here, had it doubled up, and it actually broke under the weight of all that snow and ice and everything. Remember, we had like, there was a day about a week ago, it was like the Monday, I can't remember the date exactly. We had so much snow that in my yard, we had to shovel the driveway 3 times. We shoveled by hand so that, you know, and each time it was like 4 inches deep sort of thing, right? So we got a substantial amount of snow, really good snowing. So the weight of that actually broke. You can see the remnant of the double beam here, right? It broke off here. This part was just hanging down on the ground. So it's firewood now, right? But that's the remnant there, right? So there was, you can see where the main beam broke down there. Right, so it broke down there, and this one's carrying it, and the other piece broke off right here, and this one's carrying it. And who knows, when it heats up, it might become unsafe. I don't know. But anyway, it withstood. Like yesterday, the wind was pretty substantial wind and pretty intense conditions. I'm expecting it not to come down today. I hope I don't find out the hard way that that's not the case. But anyway, if you were in a survival situation, you're just throwing things together. And again, you don't have a saw, so you can't cut down a nice, strong green tree. You're just using whatever you can push over, whenever you can scrounge in that situation. All right, so I've gone around and gathered up some fire starting materials. You know, it always never ceases to amaze me, no matter how much rain there is and how much weather there is. If you go in the sort of thicker forest and you look at the base of trees, there's little, you know, pretty dry little twig type things you could snap off. I was able to pry a little bit of wood off a dead tree, just using my knife and sort of prying out on it. It's got a bit of frost on it, right? This was a tree maybe 6 inches in diameter sort of thing, unable to push it over, but it was very dead and it was near a big dead tree. Anyway, this will dry out fairly quickly once I get all this birch going here, right? Now I'm just going to use my Bic lighter to get this started. You know, I'm always amazed at a lot of these outdoors channels where someone, you know, they always light their fire using a ferro rod. I mean, proving you can start a fire with a ferro rod is not evidence that you are survivor instructor caliber survivalist. It's proof that you know how to start a fire with a ferro rod. That's it. The last video I made in this spot, I used a ferro rod. There's, you know, it's a good thing to practice doing. It's a good thing to know how to do if you ever lose your Bic lighter or it fails on you or whatever. I always have a ferro rod attached to my knife, so I've always got it. And I use it from time to time to start fires, just to maintain the skill. But of course, Bic lighter is a hell of a lot faster, right? So we'll get that going. Everything here is kind of wet and kind of damp, but and birch bark can be a little bit iffy when you're first getting it going, as I mentioned in the previous video. But once you get it, and some of this birch bark's quite wet, you can see the frost and ice inside this, right? But some of it's just paper dry, right? You could use that for toilet paper. So some of it's quite nice and some of it's kind of iffy, but it'll all go. You know, it'll all get going. So the advantage, I mean, I have the long log fire here, but I've got the Siberian fire going here as well. One great advantage of this style of fire is that this produces, I mean, basically you're burning wood here, you're burning the ends of the logs and you're moving them forward. But also this area provides a fantastic drying rack for drying things off. You got a piece of wood, you can just sit it there, right, and let the heat of the fire warm it up, right? So you've got that nice convenient drying rack. Got a bit more birch bark here. It's also a cooking surface. You can put, you know, a pot up there. Once you get the fire going really good, you can use this to cook on. Okay, I'm not going to do that in the video today, but you know, I think I should get a number of fires out of this. I'm lighting this up today to heat up the shelter to see what we can do with that. But you know, these are easy to put out, easy to reuse. It's a great setup for a fire, the Siberian log fire. And the great thing about combining it with the long log fire is these logs get burned in half and you can sort of incorporate them into it as you go. I thought I'd just show a sped up version of me getting the fire going. It took the better part of an hour to really get this thing humming. Remember, everything was wet, no axe, no saw, and just working barehanded sort of thing. And I filmed the whole thing, but then when I went to make the video, I was just like, this is an hour. No one wants to watch me frig with the fly for an hour. So this is just a really sped up version of me doing that. Take note of noticing me reconfigure the fire at certain stages. That's just something you have to do. All right, now I can really feel this fire starting to catch, starting to burn, starting to actually work its issues out. Let's put it that way, right? The critical mass of the wood has had the heat, the moisture removed, it's been warmed up, and things are starting to burn now the way you would expect a good warming fire to burn. Anyway, now that's going reasonably good. I can start messing around with some of this wood here. I'm going to use that for just regular fuel. Same with that. And same with that. Now that's a bit wet. It's these logs that are immediately engaged in the fire that I want to manipulate. Logs that are right next to it. I want all of those ends sort of engaged in the fire. In front of where I'm sitting. Okay, so if we step back, right, there's where I'm supposed to sit. There's the fire, and the fire is sort of aimed at it, even though the wind's coming towards the camera here. Okay, but I'm going to set this thermometer over here. All right, and it's registering at about, I don't know how well you can see that, but I would say -3 Celsius. Right, around -3 Celsius. Celsius is the one on the right. Okay, on the left is the Fahrenheit. I do everything in Celsius, so it's around -2, -3 Celsius. Let's see now. I don't know how well that'll stay there. Well, let's put that there like that. Okay, so I just set that in place. This one's at about 0, so not that much of a difference at this spot compared to just over there. You can see the thermometer over there. But I expect as this fire continues to warm up, and as it warms up all this wood, we should get some kind of effect. All right, so I'll check back with you in about 10 minutes. Anyway, I'm sitting here, and I'm getting some warmth off the fire. Not an incredible amount, to tell you the truth. Now, I mean, this fire is still picking up steam, and it's still getting heat. There's a bit of a breeze coming through the side of my shelter. These are all things you would notice as you were sitting. So, I mean, if it was nighttime, I would. The scenario I gave in the previous video was that you'd gathered all kinds of materials near the shelter, and as you're tending the fire in the evening, you're making little adjustments to the shelter to you know, just make it more airtight, not airtight, but, you know, like basically breeze proof. Basically, you've got heat coming off this fire, and you've got wind blowing, you know, and it's heating the area around you, the air around you. But then you've got breezes blowing it away. I can literally feel a breeze coming through here. So the next order of business, I would say, would be to stop this up. And I think once I do that, it'll make a difference. Because temperature-wise, this thermometer right now, and I mean, they were both at about the same when I set them up. This thermometer is only about 3 or 4 degrees warmer than the other one in terms of the heat it's registering, right? So that's not great. I mean, it's probably -2 today, and the fire where I am sitting here in the shelter, it's a couple degrees warmer than that. That's not enough, right? You need substantially more heat to survive a minus double-digit night. Now it could be move the fire closer to the shelter to make a difference, right? It's back more than a stride for now, right? All that can be adjusted as you go along. Certainly my toes are getting feeling a bit warmer now. I've got that going on anyway. But yeah, let me work on this shelter a little bit and try to jam this up just with some dead trees and stuff like that, and see how much of a difference that makes. And I think it will. There's literally a breeze blowing on my body through here. There's a breeze coming right through this, so we need to stop this up. Okay, it's about 15 minutes later. I've stopped the hole up a little bit better. Just went and added more wood to it. There's still some gaps, but I don't feel a breeze blowing on me the way I felt before. And of course, this can be amended. If you're waiting out the night, you got a lot of time to, just mess around with things and, sort of plug things up. And there's a lot of different kinds of materials you can use just to jam things up. Nothing has to be perfect, right? You're just trying to keep a breeze down, right? And for that matter, spruce boughs do a lot of work. When I set this thing up, everything was so soaked, it didn't make sense to use spruce boughs. But a spruce bough shelter is just about the most practical thing you can normally do in a woods like this. I just couldn't do one when I set the shelter up because everything was covered in ice. Anyway, the situation now is that we're almost at 5C in the shelter by the fire. The fire is starting to burn well. I think it's actually too far from the shelter. The rule of thumb is that the fire should be astride from where you're sitting. And I'd say this fire it's probably like 4 or 5 feet from where I'm sitting. For some reason, when I set it up, that seemed like a stride, but I can feel, so where I'm sitting, and I guess my face is maybe a foot closer than the thermometer, but I can feel heat coming off of this. It's cold enough outside that you really can't get by without mittens today, but I don't have any mitts on. My hands feel fine. I can feel the heat coming off of this. But I still think it would be worthwhile to move the fire another foot this way to really, remember, we're trying to heat up all this wood and all this material, and me, of course, and the idea is you got to survive the night. I think the fire would have to be a little bit closer. I would say 1 foot closer, so that it's about 3 feet from right now. Here's the edge of the seat here, right? So I'm closer than that because my knee's out a foot from that. But the idea is you're laying down, right? So I would say we're 1, 2, yeah, I'd say the real center core heat of the fire is about 4 feet from where I am. It's okay for just sitting by it because certainly I can feel the heat on my knees, right? I can feel the heat on me, but it's not warming up the wood yet. I can't feel that. I mean, it's just got going. It's just started to really go and really burn well. I think though, like, it feels warm enough, so my bum is cold, but my top actually feels warm. So I'm actually going to take off my jacket and I'm going to sit by the fire and see how I feel sitting by the fire with a toque on and with just a cotton. I have a cotton t-shirt and a cotton long sleeve shirt on. So I'm not dressed for winter. That is, and I did that on purpose. I basically wanted to be underdressed for the situation, but I do have a nice wool jacket here. But I'm going to lay the jacket down and sit on it to keep my bum warm and see what of a difference that makes, how warm my body is sitting next to the fire here like this. All right, so I've been here the better part of an hour and a half. As you can see, I got my jacket off. I've been sitting over there off and on between, messing with the fire and just, little adjustments and stuff like that. I've moved the fire, so you can see the line here. This is where I had the sort of back of the fire when I started it. I moved it about a foot forward. Not ideal. It's unfortunate the wind, when I set this whole shelter up, the wind was going this direction. Today, it's almost blowing straight into the shelter. Not exactly. It sort of shifts. So sometimes it's blowing straight in, sometimes it's blowing off to an angle. I assume the warmer the fire gets, the less that'll be the case. And it's not because I got the fire too close to the shelter. The wind is just literally coming from this direction. Anyway, thermometer. So, you look at this thermometer here. I don't know how well that's coming across on camera, but it's saying that it's -3 Celsius according to this thermometer. Okay, and I checked both the thermometers when I took these were thermometers from my garage. They were both registering the same temperature. They're at least within a degree of one another, okay? So we're at -3 over here. So basically, this is about 10 feet from the fire. and what you'd be getting if you had no shelter at all. I can move this a bit closer to the fire, let's say right here. Okay, so that's roughly the same distance from the fire as the thermometer in the shelter. It's about 4 feet from the fire. It's just a little sort of improvised tripod. It's a walking stick turned into a tripod. A lot of my videos, that's my camera's attached to that. 2 pipes attached with some bicycle tube. Anyway, so let's see, is this gotten any warmer here? This is still saying it's at about -2. Okay, might get a little bit warmer, but not much. Okay, now we go in the shelter. Hopefully the smoke doesn't follow us in here. Got a nice fire going. Okay, I can feel it on my body. Again, I took my jacket off a while ago because my bum was getting cold sitting on this cold wood. Okay, but anyway, so it's about -2, -3. Definitely not the sort of temperature you want to have no mitts and be wearing a thin cotton shirt over a cotton t-shirt. Right? Definitely not the weather you want to be dressed like that in. Sitting here, I'm okay. It's right now it's saying it's almost 15 C, I'd say. So there's 10 C there, and you know, it's at about, I'd say 14 Celsius. Okay, that's taken about an hour and a half. I anticipate, and I gotta go now. I can't be here all day. I've been here almost 2 hours, right? So it's taken a while, and even 15 minutes ago this was closer to 10. So it's really come up the last 15 minutes. Now that this fire has really started taking off, since I've moved it another foot closer, so that according to the inverse square law, that is to say, the closer the fire is to you, the warmer it is, which is a no-brainer. So I've moved the fire closer. It's about, you know, the edge of the fire is about, I'd say it's still about 4 feet from here, but I don't want to be any closer or the smoke will start coming. If you're too close to a fire, the smoke will come right at you no matter which way the wind's going. If there's no wind at all, the fire, it'll create a kind of vacuum and the fire will come at you. So I mean, just while I'm talking, it's almost hit 15 now. Okay, but what's happening is, sure, there's heat coming off the fire, and the fire is heating up the air, but it's also heating up all of this wood. And I mean, it's hard to see because there's smoke coming off the fire. Maybe I can capture it. But you stand back, I don't know if it's obvious here, but there's places where I can't see it now. I was seeing it earlier. That very, yeah, okay, so I don't know how well you can see that, but there's steam coming off this wood. This is a tree, right? Big maple tree, okay? But this tree is getting warm and there's steam coming off. You can see that. That's not smoke. That's okay. I can see it. I don't know if you can see it on camera, but there's smoke coming off of that tree. So this tree is warming up, but all of this wood is warming up. And the longer I run this fire and keep it going, as long as I've got a good, bright, you know, red-yellow flame, right? Because that's basically, it's the flame that's casting the heat, right? Most of the actual heat from the fire is just going away, right? But it's the flame, it's the radiant heat that's providing heat. I mean, sure, when the smoke's blowing in there, it gets nice and warm, but you can't breathe, right? But that's good. You know, you just step up and get away from it when that's happening, but that's warming up all of that wood. So what's happening is you've got a source of heat and you've got a heat absorption unit, right? That you're sleeping inside of. Hopefully it doesn't collapse on top of you. Okay, but the whole thing, all the wood is absorbing the heat from the fire. If I could stay here longer, I mean, so I've been here, it's probably been 2 hours since I struck the first match sort of thing, right? All in, 2 hours since I started messing with the fire. You know, while you're messing with the fire, you're moving around, you're staying warm and so on. You know, I did a little bit over here. There was a fallen spruce tree that I used to sort of stop up the spaces, the gap that was coming through here. So it was great. Didn't even have to do any work. There was just a tree that blew over in the storm. Right over there. You can see it. Anyway, also you can see all the snow is gone. See, everywhere else there's snow on the ground, right? All that snow is gone in the area. Everything, the whole thing is thawed out, right? So we definitely got a situation happening here. It would be in my interest if I were to spend the night to keep my jacket off of the wood there and just let the flame and the heat of the fire heat that wood. If I was lucky, and I'm not, there'd be rocks around here, and I could heat the rocks up and put them underneath. Like, you notice the bed. You don't want to be laying. I've seen even gurus like Ray Mears make shelters where they're lying on the ground. You don't want to lie on the ground when you're in the woods, even in like May. I've gone on fishing trips. I gotta move there because there's too much smoke. But I've gone on fishing trips in May with buddies where I've just laid down on the ground. You know, you have a few beers, you talk, shooting the breeze, and I've laid down on the ground next to a fire and fallen asleep and woken up at like 2 in the morning, freezing, because the ground will draw the heat out of you like you wouldn't believe. Even in, you know, May, June sort of thing, because the ground's well below your body temperature. And certainly this time of year, you don't want that, right? So you can see I've got a space under the sort of bed that I've affected there, so that at least some of the warm air coming off the fire can get under it. But if I was really lucky, I would have, you know, rocks and things like that. As of right now, it's reasonably... What are we at now? Okay, just while I've been talking, we're almost at 20 now. Just during the conversation, right? We're at 19 Celsius now, right? So we've really warmed up. And you can see, look at this. Can you see the steam coming off the wood there? Next to the thermometer where my finger is, right? So I mean, the whole shelter is taking on, you can see that it's not burning, that's steam, right? So the whole shelter, it's actually warm to the touch now, this wood. Okay, so the whole thing is warming up, absorbing heat, and now it's gone beyond 20 just in the last few minutes, right? So we're really got some heat coming off this fire now, and it's really comfy here. Now, is it warm enough to, you know, I wouldn't sleep out here naked at night, you know, but it is warm enough for me to have my jacket off on a -3 Celsius day with no gloves. I could easily kick my boots off now, right? Give my feet a break. I just have them like this. It's certainly warm enough to do that. For whatever reason, the breeze has finally decided to cooperate, and it's taking the smoke of the fire away from the shelter. So that's good. That's another reason to have the sort of floor of the shelter off the ground but low to the ground, so that if the wind does shift and the smoke is coming towards you, at least you're low enough that it shouldn't be down where you are. It'll go up in the air, you know, stop, drop, and roll sort of thing. Stay low and you're below the smoke. So if you do fall asleep, it's not going to be too low. Now, again, this is the idea here is a survival situation where you haven't got a lot of time, and you know, a lot of times when you see people setting that stuff up on TV, it's a set, there's assistants, you're not seeing everything, right? This is, everything's haphazard. Oh, my feet are getting nice and warm now, right? So this is a different sort of situation where you're just using what you can find. Everything's wet, nothing's ideal, and you're just getting by with what's there. But I think I mean, look at the thermometer now. It's 21 Celsius now. It's no warmer out there. It's still -3 over there. I mean, let me look at the thermometer. I got a thermometer on a little tripod there. Let's have a look at that now that it's been there a good 10 minutes or so. Running out of battery here, so I gotta wrap this video up. Let's have a look at that. Okay, so this is not, look, there's the tripod thermometer, there's the fire, there's the shelter thermometer, same distance. This thermometer is, okay, so it's a bit warmer than further away. So this thermometer is at 2 Celsius. Is that right? Yes, this thermometer is at +2 Celsius. Okay, so when it was over against that tree, which is about 10 feet from the fire, it was -3, -4. Over here, it's about +2. And in there, where is it now? Yeah, in here we're at 20 C, which is nice. It's room temperature over here. Now, you know, this is not the coldest day of the year. You know, -2, -3 Celsius is not, you know, Arctic conditions. So this is proof of concept, okay? I haven't proven that this is, you know, basically, I think with what I've done here, I've shown that with a big fire and with a shelter like this where you're keeping the wind away and the wood can absorb the heat. And remember, this is going to get warmer and warmer, right? The bigger the fire and the more closed in the shelter is, and the mass of wood, the thermal mass, which can absorb the heat, you can achieve a difference in temperature between what's out there, right? Having no shelter at all and being by a fire, which is another option, and having a shelter like this and being by a fire, a sort of well-made fire that's easy to maintain, easy to, you know, all I got to do to keep this fire going is keep moving the logs this way, right? And I've probably got, I mean, this has been burning for about 2 hours. It hasn't really been, it's really been like the last half hour this thing has started to really go. Okay, so I'd say I got about 2 hours worth of wood here, and then I got to get more, right? So I need at least this much again to make it through a night, probably even 3 times as much. Need a lot of wood to make it through a night with heat, right? But this is warm. I mean, I can feel it on my face, I can feel it on my hands, I feel it on my legs. The rubber on my boots feels kind of soft. You know, this is a warm, hot fire. I don't want to have the camera too close to it. So yeah, there's basically 20 degrees difference between inside the shelter and outside the shelter. There's about 18 degrees difference between inside the shelter and near the fire with no shelter. So it makes a big difference to have a kind of shelter, and not just any kind. I mean, there's more to this shelter than it being windproof. The wood absorbs heat. This is actually warm to the touch, believe it or not. So like if I go anywhere in the woods today and put my hand against a tree and keep it there for about 2 minutes, the hand goes numb and stops working. Right, against here, it's almost body temperature. This wood is probably 30 degrees Celsius, right? So I've got this wonderful big warm thing that I'm in, right? I've got a super hot thing here, which is just too smoky and too dangerous to be on top of, but it's warming up this other big warm thing that I'm sleeping on and in. And if I can maintain the fire all night, right? Let's say you advance it up like this, you get it to 20 C, you doze off and you fall asleep, and then you wake up a couple hours later and the whole fire's sort of gone way down, and you got to step for about an hour tinkering with it to get it warm again, then you fall asleep for another couple hours. It's not a good night, right? It's not restful. It's a bad night. It's a tough night, right? But if the idea is to just make it through the night so you can find your way out the next day, that's great. You know, if this was that situation and it was morning now, I can hear, I know, like, I'm about 1 kilometer or so from civilization. I know that because I'm not lost. But let's say I was lost and I didn't know where I was. I can hear some sort of machine. Where I live, it's sort of a new development area, so there's some sort of machine going on over there. I don't know, it's probably a generator or something like that, you know, or a backhoe. I don't know what it is, but there's some machine going over there. I just walk towards the noise, find my way back to civilization, right, if I was completely lost. But definitely we have the heat we need to make it, right? And if it was colder, then I just have to make a bigger fire. More fires, for more fire, more shelter sort of thing. Maybe the best I could do on a really cold night was to get the shelter to 10 Celsius as opposed to 20 Celsius. You're not going to die as long as you've got, you know, I've got pants. If you're dressed to be outdoors, if you dress to be outdoors all day, as long as it's, you know, 10 degrees above zero and you're not getting a breeze blowing all, you should be able to make it through the night, right? You should be able to hang on, especially when you've got sort of an infinite source of heat, right? There's trees everywhere. Even though I have no saw, even though I have no axe, even though I don't have anything like that, I mean, yes, you should always have something like this with you because it makes all of this easier, right? You can make a beautiful, well-crafted, sort of well-engineered fire when you're sawing wood, and you can be choosy with your wood instead of just using whatever you can find, right? There's some half-decent hardwood around here, dead standing maple is usually pretty good wood, but I can't get it down without using the saw. And the whole scenario here was you're stuck in the woods and you've just got a knife and a pack of matches, you know, and you're just sort of getting by. Anyway, just a bit of a proof of concept. I haven't proven that this works without a shadow of a doubt because it's not -20 and I'm not trying to survive the entire evening out here. But I think I let the thermometers speak for themselves, right? It's about 22 Celsius where I am right now, and where you are, it's about 0 Celsius. And about 6 feet from where you are, that way behind you, it's -3 Celsius, which means there's about a 25-degree differential in temperature between not shelter like this with fire. And there's about at least a 20-degree difference between fire with no shelter where you are and fire with shelter where I am. So I think we have proof of concept. Anyway, I gotta get going, so I hope you found that interesting. If you did, please like, share, subscribe. And until next time, enjoy the outdoors on the cheap. Thanks for watching.